Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is track 4 of the 2023 Hughes SecCon. It's a 1 o'clock session. The topic today is privacy in the age of AI. Our speakers, Sergey Shkundaleu, who's the founder and CEO of IonTech Software. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. So today I got a really hard job to keep you awake after all that food at lunch, right? So my name is Sergey Shkundaleu. My background in primarily software development industry, but I moved to cybersecurity about 10 years ago. I got the only certification that I got is CISP in cybersecurity. So this is my only live social media account. There is nothing else. Well, sometimes I use LinkedIn, but it's typically repost things that I post to my main account. So let's talk about, first things first, because I'm employed by other corporations. So here's your disclaimer. Everything that I say here is my own opinion, and I do not represent any corporate entity that I might be associated with. So that's basically, I'm not a lawyer, so don't give that, don't take that as legal advice of any kind. So let's get started. Basically, we live in a very convenient world, right? There are a lot of places where you could get a service, and sometimes that service comes for free. And what you'll find is a lot of corporations that today run free service, they also have AI behind everything. They actually started before AI became a buzzword. Their intention is to keep our attention for as much as they possibly could. Because more people use their products, more people will see advertisements, and they being paid through advertisers. So all of those free products are typically run over the internet. So we carry small mobile devices that track our every move. We have a lot of other data points that can be used by companies that can connect those data points to build a model of all of us, single person. And now if you think about with release of ChatGPT and large language models, everything is a language, right? If you can translate that to a single factor, then it opens a lot of possibilities, what you can do with that information. And unfortunately, the only way for you and for all of us to actually be successful in whatever we're doing is to keep our privacy in check. Otherwise, we could be directed towards things, towards buying things and essentially spending a lot of our resources on stuff that we don't really want. So let me start by asking you a question. So how many of you actually used Uber today? A couple hands, right? But how many of you have Uber app installed on your phone? See, more hands. So, and that's kind of point. Uber is very noticeable in tracking every single move that you take. It's convenient, no question. You pull up your Uber app, You just go to a curbside, you get a driver, it takes you somewhere. You don't have to think about anything. So if you look at Austin and San Francisco, they have driverless cars hauling people around, and behind all of that, to make it really profitable, there is also AI managing all of those data points and feeding that big machine. Same goes for your shopping experience. Like everybody loves Amazon. They give you products in 2 days, but that's not profitable part of their business. Profitable part of their business is actually to drive people to their website and make you buy stuff. Even if you're going to return it, they'll make a cut of each sale. More sales, more profit to them. Today, you cannot think about anything that does not involve technology. Technology is everywhere. You cannot buy a fridge that doesn't want to be connected to the internet, right? So your dishwasher supposedly will tell you when you're out of dishwashing liquid or whatever the case might be, and keep um, reminding you to buy stuff. So that's why data in our lives is captured every single moment. And it's typically framed as all of the providers do that just to enrich your experience. But in reality, there's another side of that story. They will gladly sell that data, anonymized data, to data brokers. So a little bit more profit to them. But now let's talk about how all of that is being collected. You use websites. There's no way to avoid that today. So websites, when you type your URL in a web browser, it goes through a bunch of providers like your internet service providers, your DNS providers that can be run by either your operational system or ISP itself. And in some countries, internet service providers are obligated to keep data for a long period of time so that supposedly law enforcement can take a look at that. But if you look around the world, that data is being weaponized by governments that are not as democratic to jail people at the end of the day. So mobile phones keep track of every single move. There are two players. If you get a mobile phone today, you either get Android or Apple. I've read a white paper, probably from 2021. Researchers try to investigate what kind of data our phones will transmit to whatever servers, like Google and Apple servers, when they are inactive. So they put an active phone on a table and track it for multiple nights. You'll be surprised to find out how much data those companies transmit from supposedly our phones. But they also pointed out that that was the case when users are not logged in. So IoT devices, apps on our computers, everything. Like good example about apps on computers and how they do. Microsoft had decided a long time ago to open source one of their products, Visual Studio Code. They put it on a GitHub where people can take a look into what's going on behind the scene of that product. In a while, that product was forked. And now there is another version. where all the trackers, Microsoft trackers, has been removed from that product. So you could make your choice. You could either use Visual Studio Code officially from Microsoft, or you download open source product from open source community with all the trackers removed. So pick your poison. VPN providers, right? Everybody wants to be private. They'll protect your communication for free, right? Nothing comes for free. So just keep that thought in mind. Whenever you offered free product, there is another side of their business on how they're going to make money. So, and some companies legitimately try to help users and get money from some other sources, but you never know. You never know, especially with VPN providers. They'll protect you from everybody from external point, but they'll also gather a lot of points from you. Okay. So now what I want you to take through is just an example of things being tracked over the internet. So that's a small diagram. You typically type your address into address bar in your browser. Today, it's really popular that those browsers have search engines built in, and your request, whenever you typed your human readable address, it has to be translated to IP address, so it goes through DNS provider, through ISP provider. Then if you think about embedding that in a search provider in the mix, you'll get also a search provider who can track everything that happened before them. Then you finally get to that website that you were looking for. And on that website, developers, they don't want to reinvent the wheels, so they'll use a lot of frameworks for mobile development, and essentially those frameworks, you have CDN, like content delivery networks, for a particular framework involved in that communication. Then you have all the social media buttons then presented on that website. They'll also send some of the information to social media companies. You have advertisements. So now think about the case where there is one company behind all of that, and they can connect dots. They know that in order for you to get to the endpoint, you searched a particular term, then you clicked a couple sites, and you spent majority of time on one particular site. That was something very interesting to you, right? So Google is pretty good about it. I can tell you a personal story. When I was getting into one particular hobby, and I started searching, and I do not use Google. Full disclosure, never use Google. But I started searching some information on that hobby, on how to do that. And all of a sudden, my Chrome device in a living room that typically show nice images from all the internet started showing to me, it was about photography, one particular kind of photography, but it started showing me a really nice photo images. It's like, okay, so how did that happen? Well, information actually went through a couple more providers before it got there, but obviously they've discovered that, well, not they, AI behind all of that discovered that I was looking for particular information and started feeding me that information. So now I want to take you through a couple examples. On right side of the screen, what do you see is essentially screenshot from Android app from, I think it's messaging service by a social media company. But my point is, aside from just typical messaging service rights, so it asks for health and fitness information from that device, and it also asking for web browsing history. So intention here, and I'm speculating, I have not developed that app, but what I would be doing if I was behind that app, right? I would be connecting all of the data with messaging data that they've got, and then using that data to get some money from advertisements. So now, if you think about whenever you're using service, there is a big distinction between data that typically provided to that service and that is guarded by privacy terms, by terms of service. So those are really nice and long legal documents, which nobody ever reads. But they technically guard the data that you shared with that service. And they typically go to extend to say that it is data, uh, personally identifiable data, because that's what all the privacy laws is all about. But there is a lot of metadata behind it whenever you're using the server. That could point out to any intentions that you might have. So now, on other side of the screen is terms, no, it's actually privacy terms from social media company famous for its content, video content. So what I would like you to look at is point that that company, they will always store video that you are trying to capture using their app, regardless of whether you choose to upload it or not. They clearly say it right here, and they don't care if you use their special effects or not. They'll upload data. Um, they also want to get access to your clipboard, information that you might have in memory of your phone. Again, it says here in black and white. Other section that I failed to include here, even more interesting. It talks about them using video and using AI to essentially identify objects in the background of that video. So, and what they do with all of that information, they also talking about tracking your keystroke patterns, everything that you do on your phone. Think about it. So why those companies do it? Supposedly to provide you personalized service, right? So that whenever you join their service, they already have a baggage of data on you. If you think about mobile devices and then those devices transmitting GPS data or whatever the case might be, there are two ways to associate mobile device with that data. Typically, all of our mobile devices, they have what's called as advertisement ID. So those advertisement ID are unique identifiers that can identify device. You could refresh that ID, you could delete it, and you could get a new one. That's probably one way to help with less tracking of that data. So then additionally, every phone has unique identifier associated with it. Even if those data, those app providers, or whoever, phone manufacturers, they not necessarily have all the data about you, but they don't need it. All they want is just to build a really nice model of you that can predict your next move. We also do AI training in the background. If you think about Google's reCAPTCHA, remember that box that asks you, are you a robot? Just prove it to me that you are not a robot. What we're doing there is just training image recognition AI, nothing else. So also, governments around the world unfortunately use a lot of that data for surveillance. A while ago, probably a good while ago, like maybe 2018, 2019, New York Times ran a story where their journalists, by purchasing data from a data broker around DC area, they were able to track one person who really often visit the White House. And then they were able to, by adding more data, they were able to point out to who that person was. Out of all the DC Metroplex, they chosen one person, which is probably has best protection of all of us in the United States, and pointed out that, hey, he just drove from White House to one of his golf courses. And they were able to confirm that that was our former president by using nothing more than just data they obtained from data brokers. So what are we getting at? All of those providers, they hoard a lot of data. Data that they can use to represent us in their systems. But what's going to happen if they'll have cybersecurity incident, right? Sometimes it's actually cheaper for them to pay cybersecurity insurance than it is to build a really nice protection around data. That's supposedly anonymized. Well, all the data that you get from data brokers are anonymized. They often have leaks of data. They often settle class action lawsuits. Remember that lawsuit that was settled with, what was created agency? I think it's Experian. So they settled lawsuit where they leaked data of 140 million, if I'm not mistaken, Americans. So what do we get out of it? 2 years of free identity protection. Problem is that in an eyes of law, that data costs nothing. We cannot prove that that data can be used to actually damage us financially. So that's why all we got is just 2 years of identity protection. Again, all of those companies, they're trying to build bubble around us. Perfect users are users who plugged into their services 24/7. Remember Matrix movie? We are not far from it. Another problem is censorship. Well, obviously it's being used, weaponized, but more importantly is self-censorship. So let's pick a journalist who is kind of good and have good intention. But when that journalist knows that it's going to be a stigma on them to report on a particular story, will they report on that story? What if they lose their job? because company that they work for have a particular stand or have a particular investment. Would they report that story? Probably not. They still have family to feed. That's get us where we're at today. Basically, we have a bunch of camps, and we hate each other, right? And party, not necessarily a political party, but party in a power, whether it's market power, they trying to suppress dissent. Now, let's go a level up. When everything can be described with a language, it opens up a lot of possibilities. Microsoft bought ChatGPT for a reason. A lot of companies trying to integrate ChatGPT into their services. If you work for a large corporation, then there is a chance that you already have, they notified you about problems with ChatGPT. So you are not allowed to use ChatGPT at work under any circumstances. I think keynote speaker told today that Samsung got beaten by that already. There is a reason for it, because whenever data is embedded into their models, now there is another party that owns that data for whatever intention. Now there is another phenomenon on the market where we have celebrities who build nice chatbots and people paying to talk to a chatbot. And in many cases, people even know that they are talking to a fake thing. But chatbots are able to simulate that particular celebrity pretty well, so that people just keep on paying to that. Deepfakes, when somebody stitches face in a Photoshop, those ages go gone. Think about why we have a strike for, I think it's over already, but there was writers and actors, they were on a strike. Essentially, idea was that actors will serve as models. They'll take a lot of pictures, a lot of videos, and that would be more than enough for AI to build whatever script they want and whatever kind of actions they want that particular actor to do in there. So whenever somebody addresses us from TV, how can we tell that it's not a deep fake? We can't. Unless we are there, we can't tell that it's not being generated. Now, people are very creative, and there is another aspect of involving those generative large language models, where researchers trying to make those models do whatever they want them to do, regardless of whether it was intentional or not. Sometimes those models are able to generate really nice looking malware. So now hackers, well, Script Kiddie is at another level, right? So ChatGPT can build a malware for you. Great. But most importantly, who owns those models? Those models require a lot of computational resources. And we, humans, do not own them. They're owned by corporations who can spend that type of money to train those models. And then they'll gladly rent those models to us in whatever free service that they sell, if we can say sell in that particular moment. So what can we do about it? Well, you've done the first part. You are here. to listen to me complaining about all the problems in the world. But next step is way more important and way more painful. As I said, for example, if you try to use phones, right, there are two providers. There is another provider, so open source community trying to bring up Linux phones to the market. Well, they are painful. Once in probably 3-4 months, I'm trying to get into Linux phones. No way. No way I can use that for my communications. So, but if you keep on making every decisions with privacy in mind, you may be able to protect yourself from some of those aspects. Of course, nothing of that will protect you from, let's say, NSA. Well, those guys even more powerful, but that's not the point. Point is to become invisible to those companies. It is painful. Like if you using web browser in anonymous mode, right? You have to constantly log into a website. Like whenever you start it, you just have to go through a pain by logging in, and that's what help you. You could also choose a different type of service that are a little bit more open about what they do, like for example, I'm not here to promote any particular, but what comes to my mind, if you are using email service like Proton Email, right? There is really small amount of free service that you get from them, and it's almost unusable. You have to pay for a service, and whenever you pay for a service, that's probably a better outcome, reputable service. Other aspect that I want you to think about is you have to employ a really good saying, divide and conquer. So let's say you have a single provider that provided your phone, that provided your mail service, that provided your search. Divide them. Use different search provider, use different email provider, which has no connection from company who built your phone, right? That way, all of these companies, they'll still have a little bit of your data, but it's going to be a smaller sliver of that data, and hopefully it will help you in the long run. And my hope that it will help all of us to get back control of our life. So there are a lot of tools available online. The one pager that I would highly recommend is censorship. I think it's censorship self-defense at EFF.org. Surveillance self-defense. So I was thinking why it's S. So it's surveillance self-defense. They have a lot of articles on how to protect yourself from surveillance. And by just going through those articles and implementing those measures, you'll be able to help yourself. Then there are a lot of ad blockers. Employ ad blocker because that will help you to stay invisible from all the advertisers, or at least some of them. There are a lot of services that you could host yourself. That's painful, but hey, that might be your choice. That way, again, you know what is happening with your data, and it's better for you. But my main point is start thinking about it. and start doing whatever you can. Start small, start today. Thank you so much. So I think we have a few minutes for Q&A. Any questions? Okay. False identities to keep trackers from tracking. Okay. So the question is, has been any efforts to build false identities to thwart off trackers like avatars? I have not heard of that particular use case. That's very interesting. But as I mentioned, celebrities build those chatbots. There are a lot of companies who will build a model of who could do video calls, chatting. So, but that's not in the name of protecting you as individual user. Interesting. Well, I don't know. I really don't know. Okay. Yep. Yeah. 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 Drastically. Yeah. You know, there are two things. The first thing, I I don't know if anybody watched. There was series by Amazon, Mr. Robot or something like that, right? So one point that I would like to mention is that guy Elliot. He mentioned that whoever owns the last node is who controls your data. So that's kind of main interesting point. Now back to your question: can we recommend Tor browser or any sort of privacy-oriented browser to family and friends? Well, other kind of not a quote, but in a Matrix movie, there was one guy, I forgot what his name, right, who worked with that Agent Smith to get back into Matrix, right? He just chosen to stay there. That's not for everybody. Some people may not ever be able to overcome that problems that those privacy protection brings. It is painful. I mean, I can not drop everything and go silent. Um, so sometimes, I mean, you go to a doctor and they ask you to fill a form on that website. Well, yes, you can keep on choosing doctors who will bring you a paper form or whatever, or won't require that data. But if you are in pain, so how long you're going to be able to kind of keep on shopping, right? Or if you file the paper form, how long or where that paper form would go? I mean, that's interesting question. Okay. Okay, so I'll repeat the question. Can we run some tools to make that information is useless from a standpoint of particular party? Um, and we certainly can. I believe that's effectively what Tor browser trying to do. They kind of trying to route traffic through a bunch of things to keep you invisible. They also recommend to never use your browser in kind of full screen mode, because screen is part of protection, part of data collection that typically your web browser would send. Um, because all of the web services, they want to optimize based on your screen. So um, if you have particular unique identifier in terms of screen resolution, well, that's going to be a problem. But we certainly can run a lot of tools. I don't know. We certainly can try, and we should be trying it. So problem with that is essentially you would have to develop all of those scripts. I mean, yes, there is open source community, and they've done a lot of work. If you think about OSINT community that doing research on open source intelligence, they've got a lot of tools, and you could use those tools to actually help you protect your privacy. So you could use exactly the same tools as open source intelligence researchers using to find you, right? So that way you would understand your profile and whatever you need to change in your profile to become invisible. And then step by step, you can keep on fighting that fight. So, but it's going to be painful. There is no magic pill, unfortunately. Yeah. Good, good question. So, question is, there are a lot of regulations around the world that supposedly directing towards protection privacy for the people. And my answer to that, those regulations are typically talking about personally identifiable information. So your name. In Europe, they've gone to really far away to protect your IP address. So that's kind of helping. So now in EU, based on GDPR, based on at least my reading, IP address is actually part of protection. So that's a good move. But they want to protect you from company trying to identify screen resolution and then trying to build based on screen resolution and bunch of other information, data points that they've collected off of their web server, because your web browser transmits that information to them. They will be able to fingerprint that browser and track you through a bunch of other locations. So that data is not a part of discussion in those legislative processes. And that's the problem. So thank you. I think I was shown that I've got last minute. So thank you so much for coming.